have historically, what should have
Y'all are acting like it's going to be a funeral.
Testing. Okay, since the first thing we'll do to kick this off will be let's give our governor, chief executive. Well, good afternoon. My name is Bill Davis. I'm the Martin County Judge Executive, and I want to welcome you to the Roy Collier Community Center and in Martin County, where we are moving forward together with our way to recovery. We must stay united, and the next thing that I have on the list here is that our hospitality room and our refreshment stand in the back. I want to thank Booth Energy for this and all the work that they did. Whenever I talked to Aaron about our governor coming, the next thing I knew, I had Ronnie Warwicks and staff from Booth Energy going to work, doing all the necessary things that you see that have been done here in this room. And we want to thank them for all that they have done. We appreciate what Governor Bevins, we appreciate the fact that he is visiting our county. And one of the things that I want to say is that I appreciate the things that he has done for Martin County in the short time that I have been Judge Executive. And I'm also going to go ahead and say that I'm appreciative of the things that he is going to do for our Martin County. The great things that he has done for our state of Kentucky. I know how selfish that all of us are when we speak of the name Kentucky. And actually, we show that in each and every endeavor that comes up when we need to unite as Kentuckians. At this time, I would like to call upon Steve Goebel, Martin County Assistant Judge, to come forth and lead us in the pledge. Steve.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Steve. also want to take this opportunity, since we have done the pledge, to thank each and every veteran in the room for their service to our great country. So we thank you, the veterans that are here today. Next on our agenda will be my pastor, Inez First Baptist Church, Pastor Casey. He's going to lead us in prayer. Would you come up?
Thank you very much, Brother Bill, and thank you, Governor, for being here with us today. I guess at this time, I'll ask if everybody would just bow their head and close their eyes, and let's have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we are so grateful, and Lord, we are so thankful, God. Lord, to be blessed in the wonderful state that we live, God. Lord, to know that your creation and the beauty of the mountains which surround us, Father, it is truly magnificent, Lord, just to see your handiwork, God. Lord, I just thank you so much for this opportunity that you have given us today, Father. Lord, I thank you for the leadership that is found within our state, God. Lord, I thank you for just the opportunities that have been proven, Father, to be able to stand against abortion. Lord, to be able to stand up for the foster children that are found all across this state, God. Lord, we know that you are moving. Lord, we know that you are working, Father. And I just pray, Lord, that our wonderful Commonwealth today, Father, will be an example to the other 49 states found within our country, God. Lord, I pray, God, that you will continue to use the leadership of our country. Lord, I pray, God, that your will be done, Father, in so many ways, God. Lord, I pray that you will bless this meeting. Lord, I just pray that through this time, Father, that we will stand united. But Lord, that we will come together in this moment, not for the good of ourselves, Father, but for the good of not only our state and our country, Father. Lord, I pray that you'll bless this time as only you can do. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Well, the next thing that we have is the main thing that we have all come here today to listen to, and it's not often that we have our governor of our great state to come to our county to share with us what is going on in the state. Not only what is going on in the state, but to open it up for questions that any of us may have as to what that is going on, that he can enlighten us into. And I know that there are several questions. And one of the things that I want to expound upon here, probably for a minute or so before the governor comes up, is that
I would have been disappointed if you hadn't.
is that the 3 months that I have been downtown as this is uptown, in downtown as the judge executive, it has been really surprising and really a joy. One of the few parts that I can say joy of the job is working with his staff, the leaders of his different departments. You go to meetings and they all, you know, it is amazing as to how that they extend the warmth, and it is amazing how that they will extend to you to let you know that each and everything that may come up, that if you have a question, please call. And not only that, just about every day there's an email or a phone call from the different departments offering help or offering, you know, a suggestion or telling you, you know, what that needs to be done and how that it needs to be done, and if you need help, they're there also to help. I thank the governor for this. You know, he has to play a part in having such a wonderful staff that he has in his different departments. But a couple of things that I would like to talk about is the government and our governor has really hit upon economic development, bringing jobs into our state. We have had an opportunity to experience this year in our county, but to the sad delight, that's a good word, two good words, sad delight, this fell through, But we are still working on these projects. They are long-term and they are long, drawn-out processes. But some of the other things that the governor has done, I think in the first year that he was governor, there was like the prior year, in the prior administration, there was like $5 million in infrastructure that came into the state. And I think the first year that Governor Bevins was in, that increased to $9 million, and that is still going up. We, as a state, and we are going to expect, as Martin Countyans, to get our fair share of this, and we are working on this now. And this is one of the things we need, and we want to bring jobs to our area. And with the governor's help and his staff, we see a bright future. We see a very bright future in this. So with no further things from the judge's office, I would like to introduce our governor, our 62nd governor of the state of Kentucky, Governor Matt Bevins.
Let me test something real quickly. Is there anybody who needs this for your ability to pick this up? Do you? Okay, all right. I'll defer to you all then. I always feel like I should be singing to you or something, or doing karaoke at this point with this microphone. But I want to thank you for being here. You know, on a beautiful Saturday in the springtime, there's a lot of places you could have been. And I want to thank you for being here, really and truly. I really am grateful to you, and I mean it. Some of you are here in support, some of you are here clearly not. And yet the beautiful thing is this. This is America. And this is literally, this is all good, really and truly. I mean, this is great. I said that just so all that you'll get your 15 minutes worth. All the people in the media now, they're so excited to see you here. But here's, in all seriousness, this is what America looks like. I was struck by the words that you just mentioned, which is, you know, sad delight. That's life in so many respects. When you look at a day like today, you look at a beautiful day here in the mountains, and you think about a word like delight. I was struck by, as you opened us in prayer, you think about the verse in Psalms, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I mean, that's a variation of being delighted. And we have a lot for all that ails us, and we'll talk about this over the next hour, hour and a half. And I'll give you the time that you all need to discuss whatever you all want to talk about. But despite all of the hardships, and life comes with them. Life comes with 1,000 hardships, ones we can anticipate and ones that we can't. But in the midst of that is an amazing amount of delight and things that transcend the here and now in ways that are powerful. And so for you to come in out of a delightful day like this and be here, to ask questions, to have a conversation, I'm grateful to you. I really am. And to Jim, for you and your organization to have helped put this together to sponsor it, thank you. And thank you for all you've done for this community economically through the years. You've been a great employer and a great friend to many. Judge Davis, thank you. Judge Davis, I'm really grateful to you because I was struck by your comment about something to the effect of, you know, trying to find the moments of joy, and that wasn't your words, but trying to find the good news, and that's the truth. I mean, it really is in so many respects. I applaud you for your willingness to take this job on. It's not an easy job. It wasn't like you didn't know what he was getting into. So, and it's the same for this, and this is a rural community. It's not a big ag community, but there's a lot of little farms here and there, not a ton of outside production. It's not a lot of it being exported out of here, but there's many of you who grew up in at least a subsistence farming kind of an environment. And so you've had barns of various size, sheds and different things on the properties that many of you grew up in. So too did I. I grew up in, if it gives you any comfort, I grew up in a community that makes this look pretty urban. I grew up in a town of about 250 people. There really was no schools, stores, post office, gas stations, nothing. You had to go to town through the mountains to get to that. So it's not unlike here. But I mention this only to say that when you, in an environment like this, you know, and where people are often raising animals and things of this sort, You know what it's like after a hard winter. We didn't have a particularly hard winter this year, we really didn't. But in those years where you have a lot of snowfall, and more than in other years, stuff piles up in the barn. It just does. And this is where we are, not only in Martin County, not only in Kentucky, frankly in America in many respects. That just through the years, in recent years, there's a whole lot of stuff that is just piled up in the barn. And everyone wants to blame it on this person or that person, or it got here because of that or the other thing, or somebody should have done this, that. But at this point it doesn't matter, it's still in the barn. And we just got to shovel it out. And it's not fun, it's not pleasant, but you knew there was stuff to be shoveled out, and you were willing to come in and pick up the shovel and do it. So God bless you, and I mean it. I mean really and truly. And Kentucky is not too dissimilar in some respects. I mean, there's just stuff that needs to be shoveled out. It's the nature of things. Now the reality is I'm shoveling with a smile on my face because deep down inside of me I'm the eternal optimist. I think you are as well. I think we believe somewhere under this pile there's a pony. So we're still shoveling with a sense of encouragement. He may not ride the pony, I may not ride the pony, but someone that follows us will ride the pony. Our kids will ride the pony. Our grandkids will ride the pony. And there'll be more than one. And that's obviously an analogy, but truth be told, what you said is exactly spot on. We want opportunity. Somebody asked me, just to put it in perspective in terms of the rural, somebody asked me to come in here, whether I'm comfortable in eastern Kentucky. I feel like I'm home in many respects. I just drove up from Pike County, where I was this morning, and I grew up in a county that was 2.5 times the physical size of Pike County. It wasn't here in Kentucky. It was in rural New Hampshire, up near the Canadian border. And in this little county that was 2.5 times the physical size of Pike County, there was half as many people. So it was 20% as populous as Pike County. So here, proportionally, it feels kind of like home in many respects. What I know about coming from a world like that is that people want exactly what you said. They want to be able to create opportunity. They want the dignity that comes from being able to pursue an opportunity that exists and to derive some value from that. And to find opportunity for their children and grandchildren. For people to stay if they want to stay. Not every kid does. Where I grew up, high unemployment. It's one of the most opioid-addicted counties in America, sadly. It's something that is rampant in this part of the country too. But it's very similar in both good ways and bad ways. I say this all to say, somebody asked me when I was first elected, what would I hope when I was no longer the governor that people would say about my time and about Kentucky and what a legacy would be or whatever. And what I said to that individual is that I hope when I'm no longer the governor, that at some point down the road, maybe even while I still am, but in the days and the years and the decades ahead, that the governors of Tennessee and Georgia and North Carolina and Texas and Florida and wherever, I want them to wonder why all their kids have to go to Kentucky to get a job. Seriously. That's really, and why not? Why not? Because think about this, we are blessed with the geography, the quality of life, the cost of living, the cost of energy, the 4 seasons, the logistical abilities, the central location in the middle of America, which is the last safe place really on the planet in many respects, as imperfect as it is. We're still in the middle of North America, which is really the only stable place seemingly left on the planet. And we're right in the middle of it, with an abundance of water, with an abundance of unbelievable resources beneath our feet and growing on the mountainsides around us. We are blessed with things that the world is looking for. And we have states just to the north of us. I mean, here we're close to West Virginia and Ohio, but probably we're most bordered by Tennessee in the south and significant parts of our north, a little west of here, by Indiana. At the end of World War II, I look around this room, there's some people in this room that were alive at the end of World War II. At the end of World War II, Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky were all plus or minus the exact same population. We're all just about the same size. We're all 40,000 square miles plus or minus just a smidge. We're all 3 peas in a pod. And at that time, 75 years ago, we were in terms of population as well. And now, 75 years later, we're 4.5 million people. We were actually bigger than one of them 75 years ago. They're now 6 to 7 million people. Where's the opportunity going to come from? Where's the money going to come from to put in water systems, to modernize roadways, to do the things that we need and want in our schools, and the things that we want from law enforcement, and all of the things that we'll talk about in the time ahead? Where does the money come from? It comes from only one source: you. You. We either borrow it and you, your kids and grandkids pay it back, or you pay it now. That's it. There's no magic printing press. You know this. You knew it coming in. And the reality is, how do we be good stewards of the finite amount of it that we have?
Right.
And how do we get more of it? The only way we can get more of it is to grow our population. To get more people living here, more people working here, more people paying taxes here. Here specifically in Martin County, here specifically in Eastern Kentucky, here specifically in the Commonwealth itself. But here, that's where the opportunity is going to come from. That's it. There is no magic button somewhere. There are pools of dollars that we can apply for, and indeed we do. Indeed, so much of the money that has been invested in the last couple of years into trying to turn this water system around. And let me ask a question, and I say this out of respect and appreciation. Are there any members of the board that oversee the water system in here? Thank you. Thank you all. I mean, seriously, another thankless task in many respects, but one that has got to be addressed. And I hope you find, as the judge said, for us to be good faith partners. Wish we had an endless pot of money. But you know those pots of money that we've been trying to find both within the state and at the federal level. Just so you know, and you may be party to these conversations thus far, we are applying for some additional AML dollars. We may or may not get them. We don't get to dictate that. It's a process. These are some mine land dollars that are available for folks like us to compete for. But whether it's, a 250,000 gallon storage tank, mitigating some of the pressure in the lines, some of these most pressing needs are things that, frankly, we could do a lot of that, if not all of that, with a couple $1 million. And that's something that we're intentionally working on, and hopefully we'll be able to get. Again, I wish I could promise it to you. I wish I could come here and announce it. But these are the kind of things that we're going to continue to do. And we're doing this in large measure because it needs to be done. And that's the reason we're doing all of this. It's the reason I ran for this. It's the reason I'm guessing you did. It's the reason you guys are serving on this board. From the moment you took a position on that board, more than half the people are going to be unhappy with you all the time. That's just the reality. You know that, but you did it anyway. It's like this job, it's like that job. And that's all right. Because sometimes doing the hard right is what we need to do instead of the easy wrong. We don't need to pick on ourselves, we're human beings. It's easy to do the easy wrong. It just is. Somebody asked me one time if this job was easy. It's not easy, but it's simple. It's simple. I don't wake up in the morning and decide am I going to do the right thing or the wrong thing. I'm going to do the right thing to the best of my ability. Am I going to do it perfectly? No. I'm an imperfect person. So is everybody. But I'll do it to the best of my ability, and I'll try to do what's right. And it's the same thing for this county. I came here some years ago when I was campaigning, 4 years ago I guess it was. And I drove into town. I think it was in Warfield. Some of you, when I describe this, will remember what I was talking about. And I just about went into a hole in the road that was the size of my Suburban. And it was just outside of town here. I think it was in Warfield. And I was coming up one of the ways into town, and there were some orange barrels, sitting there, one of which had literally fallen into the hole. And there was the one in my lane, so I didn't know it was there. And I tend to sometimes move with a sense of purpose. And I came up on it pretty quickly. I was like, whoa, what is that? Now, there was room to go around, but had something been coming, it could have been quite a surprise for me. Well, I came into town and I said to someone, I said, what's up with the hole outside? Oh, that's been there for I don't know how long. And I said, seriously? And they said, well, we're a Republican county, so it's not a priority for anybody. I just remember being so ticked off at that. I've never been elected to anything in my life. It wasn't a given that I was going to be the governor. But I was like, I'll be darned if when I'm governor, we don't fix that hole. I said, that's just crazy. I was like, what if a school bus? I said that. I said, what if a school bus came around there and came on that? They said, oh, well, everyone knows it's there. I'm like, well, what if somebody doesn't? I don't know. Anyway, so that was one of my first sort of visceral memories about coming into this community. And we did. I mean, I'm telling you what, that was one of the first things we did. I told my highway department, I don't care if it's in a road fund anywhere, how much could it possibly be to fix one hole in the road? It took ridiculously longer than I thought it would to do something simple. But if you all know which hole I'm talking about, tell me, I hope it's fixed. It should be. I was showing pictures that looked like it was. Here's all this to say, these are real things, whether it's a hole in the road, whether it's a hole in a water line, or lots of holes in a water line where you're losing 50, 60, 70% of the water, whatever it is. These are things that can be taken care of. It is something, to your point, that we've got to do together, that we've got to be united. You look at this flag right here. United we stand, divided we fall. This is a room full of Republicans and Democrats. You don't get a room of this many people in any room in Kentucky without having a good mix of both. This isn't a political issue. It's about doing what's right. It's about respect for our nation. It's about respect for God and country and the rule of law and telling the truth and working hard and getting stuff done. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll open it up to whatever questions you have about anything. There's no amount of government programs that are going to fix this. If ever there was a community that knows this better than anyone else, it's this one. When literally, in about 2 weeks, it was the end of April, 55 years ago, 55 years ago, when you had the President of the United States, it's literally about 2 weeks from the 55th anniversary, I believe. I think it was April 28th. Yeah, it's going to be 55 years, I think, in about 2 weeks. That you had the President of the United States come to this community, go up the road here and hunker down on a porch, and tell everybody that we were declaring a war on poverty, and that the government was going to come in and provide programs and monies and checks, and we were going to fix it. How's that worked out? How's that worked out? And here's the reality. Why? It isn't because people didn't have good intent. It isn't because effort hasn't been made. It wasn't, Lord knows, because money hasn't been spent. But the solution is not government programs. It is not other people's money. It is giving people opportunity and the expectation that they will seize that opportunity. That's it. Stop. The thing I'll say is this. When I was a kid, everybody where we lived was eligible for a lot of different things. One of them was government cheese. It was called, that's what we called it. I don't know what its official name was. It came in these rectangular boxes, round boxes. And we never got it at our house. And I used to always be a little irritated by that because we ate it at our friend's house and we liked it. My dad would never get this government cheese. And I asked my dad one time, and I was probably about 14, 15 years old. I said to my dad, I said, why don't we take the government cheese? I mean, if they're eligible and they're eligible, I mean, I figured we are. And my father said to me, and I've never forgotten it, he said, don't ever take something that you didn't earn. And I'll tell you this, he wasn't picking on anyone who was taking it. He wasn't picking on the program that created it. He wasn't picking on the quality of the cheese. He was trying to send me a message that was bigger than a box of cheese. And how blessed I was to have been raised by a mother and father, who while we didn't have much, you know, while I shared a bedroom in an unheated house with no television and no shower, and I shared a bedroom with my 3 brothers, you know, not too different than how most folks in this room probably grew up, some variation of this. How blessed I was to be in a financially humble place, but to be rich in all the things that mattered. To my parents who respected one another, respected God, respected our nation, expected us to respect other people, and expected us to respect the dignity associated with giving an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Amen. What this community is asking for, nothing more, and I know it because I'm from a community like this, is just that opportunity and nothing more. Just give us a chance to do for ourselves and get as much government out of our way as we possibly can. This is my commitment to you. To the best of my ability, it's what we've been trying to do. And it's what I'll continue to do as long as you afford me this opportunity. With that said, what questions can I answer on anything? Specific, general, questions at all? Yes, sir. And I'll repeat the questions too so everybody can hear.
About 645, that would be like a major artery for Martin County. You take right out here to Route 40, it's just about 5 miles, maybe 6 to West Virginia. And then people have to travel all the way from West Virginia to Walmart or whatever, or all the way back down to Fort Gate, back around over 25 miles. I think that's a gold mine in Martin County. I believe that's our lifeline. And I guess what I'm asking, we'd like that to be put back on the 6-year plan.
And this is for 645.
645.
Here's what I will tell you. So the question is about 645. I'm just making some notes here. The question is about 645 and it being a lifeline, and I don't disagree with that. And the request is this could be put back into the 6-year plan. One thing that I will always do with you is I'll shoot straight. And you should expect this. It doesn't. I happen to be a registered Republican. It shouldn't matter whether I'm Republican or Democrat. Anybody that would ever represent you in any office, at any level, should tell you the truth, period. You should expect that. It's not unique to any one party, the truth. It shouldn't be unique to people. Sadly, we don't get enough of it anymore. The 6-year road plan, when I was elected, had so many multiples of projects in it than there was any likelihood of ever getting done in 6 years. Because people got lied to all the time. Oh, I got it in the road plan. Don't you worry. Got you in the road plan. It was silly. They did it to get elected, re-elected, to make people go away and not bother them. But everybody knew that for every dollar that had been promised, we had some dimes to actually deliver. I'm not playing that game. I'm just not. It's not how I was raised. I think it's disrespectful to people. We now have the 6-year road plan down to about 108%. So we still are oversubscribed. We still have more projects in it than we have money or the perceived likelihood of getting the money to do, but not by much. We've pared it down. This has caused some things to fall out, including this project. But it's not because I don't believe it should or could be done. It's just that we're trying to right-size this. And with all due respect to 645, you mentioned one thing that it connects to. 40 is a bigger issue here. I just say, and not to disrespect 645, because that is true. But 40, there's a lot that needs to be done there. 908, I mean, just simple things like ditching and repairing slides and things of this sort. These are things that we've got to get done. These are things that, weather permitting, you'll start seeing us ditch on 908 and get some of this stuff done. We're applying for FEMA monies, etc., with a lot of this water, flood, water, landslides and things that come down from all the water. We're trying to see what we can do to harness money, state, local, and otherwise, to address these things. At 40, there's better likelihood. That there are components of that are in this plan, and I'm determined to see what we can do to accelerate those forward. Here's what I will promise you all. We'll do everything we can with the finite amount of money we have. We'll try to prioritize it. We'll work with your judge. We'll work with your magistrates. We'll work with key members of boards that are instrumental as it relates to dollars that we're able to help bring into this community. We want you to help us prioritize those and tell us how they can best be spent. But I hear you, and if we can, we'll see what we can do about bringing it back in. But it's again, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to do it. If I were a good politician, I'd go, oh yeah, we'll get that in the road plan. I'm not going to tell you that, because the odds of it are not as good as they are of us getting 40 and 908 and things like this addressed first. But if we can get to it, we will. And if there's things that are critical, we're prioritizing road projects now too that include things like safety. And with things where there really is a safety issue, those things get accelerated to the front of the line. But I appreciate it. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Why did I veto House Bill 358? Wow, softball. Here's for a couple simple reasons. It was a good bill, actually, and what it did was accomplish some good things, but there were components in it that were just wrong. They were illegal, frankly. You can't take a check. You may want the idea of being able to say, hey, if you're part of a health department, or whatever, just say health department, because that's probably most applicable in this community. If you have a local health department that you're retired from, and then you're retired and you're 5-10 years away from having worked, and you're now retired and you're getting older and you're relying on your retirement check that you earned and you were promised, and then the health department stops making contributions to their current plan, that the state would come and take your pension check and your health care, it's just not legal. It's not only is it not right, it's not legal. And people say, well, that's the way it works in CERS. It's a different plan, totally different. Indeed, there is within CERS, but people going into the plan know there is that potential. That was never part of the deal when people came into this KERS plan that this would cover. And these are quasi-governmental organizations. There's 118 of them in this county and in others. 118, I believe you have, well, I don't know if you do actually. Do you have a health department in? Yeah, okay, exactly, I thought so. So you have at least one here that is covered by this. The regional universities like Moorhead and others are covered by this. We've got to fix it. It is a good bill. I didn't veto it because it's a bad bill. I vetoed it because if we would have been sued immediately for good reason, we would have lost, and it would have held the whole thing in limbo while it bounced through the court system. That's crazy. It also had dates in there that people just didn't properly address. They had dates in there that they meant to say that this would be effective January of 2020, but all through this bill, that if I sign it and it becomes law, it says January 1st, 2019. That puts a whole lot of people's retirement for an entire year in some kind of questionable limbo. Nobody meant to say 2019, they just didn't catch it. It's a mistake. If I could line item it out and change it, I could. That's not the way the law works. I don't get to vote on the bill. I only get to either sign it, veto it, or let it go into law without a signature. And for me, and again, whether you like it or don't like it, or like what I do or don't do with it, do understand this, and you should expect it of any governor. My job is to uphold the law. I took an oath to do it. I took it when I was a military officer in the U.S. Army. Twice in my life, I've sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws associated with it. First at the national level, and most recently at the state level. And that's what I'm going to do. And if it's illegal, and if it's immoral, if it's wrong, I'm going to not be party to it. And here's the thing, I don't believe anyone intended to do this to harm people. I think it was a mistake, it was an oversight, and it was a failure to appreciate in the final hours as this got done some of the ramifications that could come from this. So I said, you know what, we have to, between now and July 1 to get it right. It's not going to take time. People say, oh, you're a special, you're going to spend money. Come on. I mean, do you think we don't waste money in this state at times? I mean, come on. This isn't a waste of money to do the right thing. To do what's legal, to do what's right, to protect our pensioners is the right thing to do. If it costs a couple $100,000 worth of money for people to come back and finish the job and do it right, versus millions of dollars worth of disruption in court cases and everything else, it's money well spent. Other questions?
Can I get a picture with you?
You can. Not right at this moment, but if you're willing to stick around, I will get a picture. Thank you. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Since you're addressing pensions, I will address the teacher pensions.
Please.
All right. Very, I want to be as respectful to you as possible.
Please. You don't even have to be if you don't want. It's easier to not.
That you keep repeating over and over again is that everyone has kicked the can down the road. Therefore, the pension system must be fixed. Therefore, I must fix the pension system. Now, in my interpretation of fix means to restore to as good, as close to new as possible. To as good as original as possible. Not simply fix. Maybe we have a different interpretation of fix. What is your interpretation of fix?
Sure. That's a good question. And the only thing I will say is to clarify one thing. I can assure you I have never said, therefore I must fix the pension, because I don't have that ability. There's 138 men and women who do, and they're the only ones. If I could fix it, I would. But I don't have that authority or that ability. It can only be done by the men and women that we elect to the House and the Senate. They have to pass a bill that would address this. I have said, and you're correct, repeatedly, that we have kicked this down the road. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but is there anyone in here who doesn't believe we've kicked this can down the road for years and years and years? People know we have. People like yourselves who've been working hard and expecting to be given what you were promised at the back end. Are you still actively teaching now?
I actually had to go back to work.
I'm sorry?
I actually had to go back to work fearing that I would not have health insurance.
So, you said you were a teacher, or did I misunderstand?
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I was and am a teacher.
Okay, great. So again, we've made commitments to people like you. There's an expectation on your part when a promise is made to you that the person who made it is actually going to back it up. So your question about how do you fix it? The first thing you do is you've got to stop lying to people. It's the first thing.
Let me interrupt you, and I don't
Please,
think
no, go ahead.
disrespectful.
No.
But I asked for your definition of the word fix.
Yes. The first thing, and I'm going to answer it for you. The first thing you have to do is stop lying to people and this gets to the heart of how you fix it. The lie is to tell people that future employees can be given the same promise you were given, and that both you and they will get it. That's a lie that we cannot back up. It's easy to say, helps people to be popular, helps them to get reelected, and it hammers people like you, and it's even more so likely to hammer those who are future employees. There are in every one of our plans not even close to the dollars necessary to fulfill the promises that have currently been made. Knowing that, and knowing that it is not possible to continue to sustain it even for those current employees and retirees, why, under any circumstance, would we make the same promise to a future employee? The only way to fix the system so that you can retire with confidence, the only way is to not offer the same system to a future employee. Not possible to do that. If we do, it comes from you. It comes from those retired. And frankly, it not only doesn't come from those, they'll never get it. So you have to preserve the existing system, which you're a part of, and the promise that has been made to you. We got to change what we promise to other people. Now, those to come will still be promised something, but let's promise something we know we can deliver on. That's what people have been proposing, and that's what I appreciate. But we've not done it. Now, it's interesting because Senate Bill 151, it was passed last session, and then it was challenged and it was struck down. And a lot of people applauded. I won't ask you if you were one, but it's amazing to me how many people that were helped by that bill were excited when it was struck down because they think they were helped. Let me explain to you real quickly what happened when it was struck down and how it actually comes at the expense of people exactly like you, especially when they have to go back to work. There were only two things in Senate Bill 151. Two things. Number one, it said that future employees won't be promised what you were promised. They'll be given a plan. It'll be one that, frankly, are likely to give them more in retirement, but it won't be the same thing you were promised. It'll be more of a defined contribution or hybrid plan, less of the defined benefit plan. That's one thing that it said. Number two, it said, how do we take care of the $60 billion that we currently owe to folks like you that's not there? The state doesn't have it. There's no pot of money somewhere. So where's it going to come from? Yes, as we said earlier, it's going to come from people moving here, working here, paying taxes, but they're not here now. So how are we going to plan for the fact that whether they come or not, we have the ability to pay off that $60 billion? Senate Bill 151, in addition to saying we'll change it for future people, said one other thing. It said we will take that $60 billion, we will slice it into pieces of 1/30ths, and over the next 30 years, every future governor and every future legislator, whether they want to or not, is bound by law to fund that. It's called level dollar funding. And we know that if we put $2 to $3 billion, because it's more than just 1/30th, because there's interest accruing, we put in $2 to $3 billion every single year for the next 30 years. That's how you guarantee that your checks continue to come. That was struck down. There is now nothing. There's nothing. It wasn't replaced with anything that protects you. You have no safety net now. And it's amazing to me how many people thought they were getting a good deal when that was struck down. That was the only thing that gave you a shot to actually get what's been promised. Because the monies that are owed, think about $60 billion. That is about 6 times, and 60 is conservative. I'll be honest with you. Because if we used a rate of return that we knew we could get, like a 30-year treasury, people say, well, let's assume the markets are going to give us this. They haven't. And I hear people say, well, I don't want my money going into the market. Where do you think it is? Every cent of your retirement is invested in the markets that go up and down. And so the problem is, there have been more and more people retiring and fewer people starting. When these plans were put in place, there were 25 to 30 folks like you working for everyone that was retiring. The very first people to retire out of these plans, whether you're a teacher, a snowplow driver, a police officer, or whatever, they were, for every person retiring, they didn't work 20 to 30 years before they retired. They didn't need to. That's what a defined benefit plan is. You're not getting your own money out. People say, I put my money in, I better get it out. It doesn't work that way. A defined benefit plan, you're getting out the money of the people that are working. And it works well when there's people working. But now, it's not 25 to 30 down here, it's 15 to 20, then it's 10, then it's 8, then it's 6, then it's 4. Do you realize that in Kentucky, we now have more retirees than people working? The system is completely broken.
Can I interrupt, please?
Please.
So your solution then is to pass charter schools?
Totally unrelated.
Yeah.
100%
But
unrelated
it is,
to
because
this.
if we lose these students to charter schools, and I want to make a simple comment, and I will leave it alone.
No, that's fine.
I
This
think
is the point of this. I don't
I
apologize at all.
think the most frustrating thing for me about charter schools is the state of Kentucky is addressing our most disenfranchised citizens in our state with the promise of a private education. That private education does not promise them standards that must be taught. It does not promise them an assessment that will judge where their students are. It does not give them the full picture. Now, you are willing to take Kentucky's education money and give to charter schools, which then, of course, will decrease the amount of teachers that are needed for the public education sector. And then where will our money come from for us that are already retired?
A couple things. First of all, there's already fewer workers than there are retirees, so you can't have a person saving for their own retirement and paying for yours. So it goes back to the level dollar funding. I say to you with all due respect, the vast majority of what you just said is incorrect.
Correct me, please.
I will, and I'll do it with as much respect as I can, but I would say this. Number one, these charter schools that have been proposed, the odds of one being here is slim to none. These are more likely to be in our urban communities.
Exactly. That was my point about the most disenfranchised.
Yeah, most of the failing schools, 2/3 of all the failing schools are in 2 counties, Fayette County and Jefferson County. Most of them, more than half of them, are in Jefferson County. These are some of our most disenfranchised kids. 70% of all the black kids in Jefferson County, there's about 110,000 kids in the Jefferson County school system. 70% of black kids, boys and girls, at any grade, 1st through 12th, 70% cannot read at grade level in Jefferson County. Don't tell me that we're doing well by them. We're not. Don't tell me we can't do better.
So your assumption is that charter schools will do better without certified teachers?
No, and this is where I want to correct you. What you're saying there is so remarkably not correct. A charter school is a public school. Every teacher who would teach in it by statutes that have been passed in the state would be a certified public educator in the same vein that you are to teach in another. A charter school is a public school. It is funded by public school dollars, taught by public school teachers, attended by kids that are coming from other public schools. But what we are doing, because iron does sharpen iron in more than a biblical sense, it's true, so does one person sharpen another, so does one school sharpen another. Competition is a good thing. It heightens the sense of urgency, and it gives parents and it gives students some option other than the abject failure they've been getting decade after decade after decade. And in some of these communities, where we put kids on buses for an hour or more every day, one way, we have created little educational nomads. These kids don't belong to the community they're from. They are disenfranchised to the extent that they don't have a lot financially. Many don't have good personal transportation. So they have parents, or very often grandparents, who don't even have the ability to go to an extracurricular activity, to go to a school play, to pick them up after practice. So they rely on an antiquated approach from the 1970s called busing, because we destroyed the local community as we've destroyed the local family by telling them that the government will take care of this. And we've ended up sucking the souls out of local communities and pretending that a government program or even a public education is the answer. It's not. And as a teacher, you know this, because there are teachers who have a heart and a passion even above and beyond others. There are. You know who they are. You're probably one of them. My point being is that it isn't just the program, it isn't just the education, it isn't just the individual. It boils down to the passion they bring to the equation. And what we know is that we have some schools in Jefferson County, among other places, that for 40 straight years have been failing these kids. Don't tell me we can't offer them a better alternative.
How will you ensure that in charter schools that the passion that I have comes to every teacher in those charter schools? How
Because
can
it
you
will be
guarantee
teachers
that?
like you, because they will volunteer to be there. And I will tell you this, if you are a
Can
public
you
school,
guarantee these most disenfranchised students that every teacher in every charter school will bring the passion that I have for teaching?
can I
If you
guarantee?
can promise that, I will support you 100%.
I couldn't guarantee you that in Martin County where you live. I'm guessing, do you live here in Martin County?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, I couldn't, nor could you, I couldn't guarantee you that the next 5 people you hire into the school system bring the passion you have. Because I'm willing to bet, I don't know you beyond this conversation, but you clearly are a passionate person. You care enough to have been here, you care enough to be asking tough questions, you care enough to have been thinking about this. The odds are not great that the next 5 people will have your passion. That's reality.
I beg to differ. I
Well,
think the teachers in Martin County are absolutely.
some are. Oh, of course. Some may have more. But my point being, that you can't guarantee what a person brings in terms of passion. You just can't. What I can tell you, though, is the people who would teach in those would be state-certified public educators who are teaching the same kids. And here's what I don't understand. Why would we care if a kid gets educated in this school versus that school if it helps the kid? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is not protecting a system or a program or the way we did it. It's how we best help the kids. How we help them get an education. That's it.
But I want that education for every child.
Absolutely.
Now, absolutely.
And so if they're not getting it-
If they are taught by certified teachers, if they are upheld to the same standards in education that we are, the public
Yeah,
school
which they would
system,
need to be.
if the assessments are the same,
Yeah.
then your administration needs to get the word out that that's the case.
Oh, believe you me, we have.
Because that's obviously
There's a
not.
whole lot of people who happen to work for other organizations that rhyme with schmay, that have worked very hard to provide a lot of the information that you had, which was just not factual. Because what I'm telling you, again, the great thing about educators is they're highly educated, they're able to read, and they're critical thinkers, and you're the embodiment of that. I would just go look it up. Go look at what the statutes are in this state, what actually allows, what is or isn't allowed for a charter school in Kentucky. And I'll tell you, the KEA is not shooting straight with you, and the KEA is not even looking out for its members, let alone for the students. They're not.
Trust me, I
They're
do not rely on the KEA for
I'm
my
glad.
information because
I'm glad.
I
But
am
a lot of those
very
talking
clear.
points are from them.
That's why my very first question was your syllogism of kicking the can down the road does not logically fall with me because
But again, please
Because
understand, those are two
your-
different things, the
so
pension and
far
education.
that your suggestions for the pension puts the weight back on me.
It wouldn't affect you at all. We're talking because you're already a teacher. This would be a future employee that would be
But
affected
if we
by what
lose
I'm proposing.
teachers, the weight comes right back to me.
Again, understand this, in the private sector, there hasn't been a new defined benefit plan offered for probably decades now, many years. Let's just stick to education for that matter. So in other words, and we're hiring people in the private sector who aren't getting the promise of a defined benefit plan, but they're going to work. But let's just stick to education. Can you name a single private school anywhere in America that offers a defined benefit plan?
Well, I haven't researched.
There isn't
Trust
one.
me, I will.
There's none. There's none. They don't exist. And the point is, they have good teachers too. We have good teachers in public education, there's good teachers in private education, there's good people and good teachers in a lot of different places. They're not attracting them with the promise of a defined benefit plan. They have a retirement plan, similar to what's being proposed for future employees in this state, but here's what I know. Let me just tell you briefly, if you'll humor me for a minute, about my personal family and what I'm guessing might be the case for someone like you. Most people who go into public education don't do it because they think they're going to get rich. They don't do it because they think that this is going to be their ticket to ride financially.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
I know.
But you do it out of passion. You do it because you want young people to succeed and you want better opportunity for young people.
But I also want a living wage.
Correct. So let me tell you two things. Number one, on my mother's side of the family, her father was born in another country, came through Ellis Island, so did all of her grandparents. So they came here fairly recently. On my father's side of the family, the first Bevins came here in the 1600s. So two very different tales. It's kind of an American story. It's what people do. But in neither one of my families had anybody ever gone beyond high school, if even through high school, until just recent years. My mother's mother, who was a first-generation American, was so grateful for her education and for her public school teachers that her passion was that she wanted to do the same thing. This is very typical. Very often people that are first-generation college graduates go into education because they're grateful for what they've been given. This was the case for my mother's mother. She was born in 1909, and for a woman born in this country in 1909 to have both an undergraduate and graduate level degree was unusual. They were both in public education. She spent her entire life as a public school teacher. The only thing she had, because my grandfather died when my mother was a little girl, I never knew him. She was a single mother raising 2 girls as a public school teacher in the 1950s, raising 2 kids, and the only thing she was ever going to have was her pension check. She lived to be 94 years old. One of the reasons I ran for governor, the reason I'm pounding the table about this, the reason I'm passionate about saving it is for people like her and people like you. Because you've been promised something and you need it. Because you can't live without it. And the state has failed its obligation in terms of making sure that they can back up the promise. On my father's side of the family, 1600s, the first person in his family to ever go to college was him, my father. Got his degree in public education, got his master's degree in public education. 2 of my 5 siblings got their degrees in public education. You're not being told that either, even though I've told many people. The point is you're being told that I despise you, your profession, and everything about it. The reason that I'm doing this, the reason I ran for governor was for 2 primary reasons. This is one of them. Because we have an obligation that we're failing, and if we do and the state becomes insolvent, it comes at the expense of everybody in here. The other is that our foster care and adoption system is so broken that it needs to be addressed. Those 2 things are why I did this. Somebody said I bring up this pension thing for political gain, that it's a political ploy for me. Really? How's that working for me? How's that working? It is a political loser. But I only bring it up because it's true.
Imagine us that are living with it.
Of course. You're scared and you're confused and you're like, what the heck? This is why I'm fighting for you. I'm the only, understand this, I am the only governor in the lifetime of anyone in this room to actually fund the ARC for the KTRS and the other plans as well. The only one ever to fund the pension on an annual basis. Ever. I'm also the only governor you've ever had that didn't sweep the lottery funds, which are supposed to go to what?
Education.
Yeah. How many of you really believe they have? They have for the last 3 years only. I'm the only governor to put 100% of that money into education. We're also putting more under budgets that I introduced into SEEK formula than we ever have. There's more money per pupil.
Be honest, is that adjusted for inflation dollars, or is that just dollars?
It's a combination of both. I haven't gone, I mean, it's both absolute dollars are higher and the amount per pupil are higher.
But is that adjusted for inflation
I
dollars?
really don't know that we formulated it based on that. It's higher. Inflation is higher. Which has risen higher, I don't know. I really don't. I've only been around for the last 3, so I haven't looked at the history of how it grew before I was here. My point is this. The things I have control over, what we budget for funding, for SEEK, what we do in terms of funding the pension, what we do in terms of the lottery funds, every one of them, I'm doing 100% of it, what we've told the people we should be doing and could be doing. I'm also the only governor that has ever been willing to take this issue on, because it is unpopular. And think about this. I put $3 billion into my budget into the retirement systems, including over $1 billion into the KTRS. Think about this. What if I had done what every governor before me did? What if I didn't put in like about $1.5 billion? You know how many, you know what I could do with 645? If I had an extra $1.5 billion, or 40, or 908, or fill in the blank in every other community.
So did you put it in, or did the legislature put it in?
I did. If you look at how, and again, despite what you're doing, the way the process works, and I encourage you, it's coming up again in 2020, the governor always submits a budget. Then the legislature does their thing to it and says, we want this, that. They'll try to adjust it, and in the end, they have to come up with something that I'm going to sign. And I will sign something based on them not taking from. But every time I have funded these pensions, no governor or legislature ever did it before. Why? Because they did not have to.
What about our young teachers? What will encourage them to go into education?
The same thing that encouraged you. The same thing that encouraged my
But I had to
grandmother.
have a living
Let me
wage.
answer your question, ma'am. The same thing that encouraged my grandmother and my father and you and any number, and my siblings, one of whom is still a 4th grade teacher, and any number of other people, is the passion and the desire to help young people.
But we have to have a living wage.
Of course. And guess what? In this state,
we have to have something.
In this state, we have a lower cost of living.
My passion is overwhelming for me.
Let me do this.
But in the long run, I had to look and say, when I retire, me and my husband will have health insurance. My husband and I will have enough money to actually live on. That was a big part of my decision to go into. Now, could I have done anything? Absolutely. I could have chosen any career I wanted to.
Well, I hope your reasons were bigger than just that. It sounds like they were from our earlier conversation.
But
and what I know and believe,
it has to play a part in
the best teachers of the future aren't going into it for their retirement. They're not. The best teachers of the future are going to go into it based on the passion to help young people be educated.
So we
do owe them.
We have to have.
But let me explain something to you. In America, if you look at all of the average salaries of teachers in America, and you rate all 50 states, Kentucky is 26th, so we're right smack dab in the middle in terms of average compensation. When you adjust that for cost of living, because housing and electricity and everything else is cheaper here than it is on the national average. When you adjust it for the cost of living, there are only 6 states in America that right now pay their teachers more than we do. Believe it or not. Now, that doesn't say that it's enough or this, that. I'm not disagreeing that there needs to be something that incentivizes people to do it, but I'm telling you, we're not shortchanging teachers in the state, quite the opposite. And the reason there are teachers going into the profession is because they understand that for their passion to be fulfilled, they're going to be receiving enough compensation to justify it. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll take the next question from somebody, is this. The connection between charter schools and your pensions are zero. They're unrelated. They're two very important things, but there's nothing to do with funding the pension that has anything to do with charter schools, back to your earlier point. Other questions?
Would you support teachers joining unions on charter schools?
Who's asking me this question? I'm sorry, who, raise your hand. Who asked me? I'm sorry, forgive us. I heard the voice, but I couldn't pin it down. Would I what?
Would you support teachers at charter schools joining unions?
Would I support teachers at charter schools joining unions?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's a free choice. I think people should have the right to join or not join anything they want to join or not join, period. It's not the role of government to tell people that. Do I think it's someone's right, and if they want to? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I think the government should mandate that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, exactly. I mean, to me, it's the same thing now across any of the skilled trades, whether it's education or anything else. I mean, the reality is, let people make their own determination, make their own choice. This is America.
Why did you shoot down prevailing wage?
The which? The prevailing wage? Here, I'll tell you why. Number one, I didn't shoot it down. It was a piece of legislation that I advocated for, and I was happy to see. Because guess how much this state saved? You want to build a new school? You want to build a new water system? You want to build anything that comes at the expense of public dollars? You were paying 20, 25, 30% more with a mandated prevailing wage than you would without it. And we are saving significant dollars. At a bare minimum, between $150 and $200 million a year in Kentucky without an artificially enforced prevailing wage. $150 to $200 million of money that comes out of communities just like this, so that when you build a school, you get more for your money. You get more for your water system for your money, or whatever the case might be. That's why. Because why should we waste money if we don't have to? Seriously, let the free market determine what the right price scale is. Let people compete. We're not compromising quality in any way, shape, or form. Anybody with any skill can still compete. But let's just be better stewards of the people's money, because it's hard to earn. And let's be smart about how we spend it. Yes, ma'am?
I'm a retired teacher. And if everything was done the way it's supposed to be, and not on the down low, hidden in a sewer bill, I think the teachers would trust what's going on a whole lot more. Because there was a lot of things that were just trying to slide in while we were all down there trying to get our pensions, to keep our pensions. And the negative comments you made about teachers.
Name one of those comments for me, please. Seriously, you're not going to offend me.
let me think, I'm trying to think of which interview it was. You did a lot of, for the newspaper, for the Courier Journal.
Oh, yeah, which is a really reliable source of things that I've said. But in all seriousness, I mean, name one comment that I've said that you're offended by.
What was it?
Call somebody a thug.
Who saw?
Okay, so okay, who said that? So, okay, I called someone a thug. All right, great. So you heard me say that? You did, okay. And did you hear it on audio or video or where?
I mean, it may have been print where I see it.
Exactly. Okay.
Are you lying?
No. Here's what I will tell you. Almost everybody's got something like this, or some variation of it.
Oh, no.
The wonderful thing about a digital world is that if you do say something, it doesn't go away. So here's what I'm going to promise you. In front of all these people, you find any evidence that I ever actually said that, any evidence, audio, video, which is what you read about, is that they heard it. If I said it, it's recorded somewhere.
If you unblock me on Twitter, I may be able to find it.
Trust me, all you have to, if you want to see my Twitter page, you Google Matt Bevins Twitter. If you haven't figured out how to get around that, you're not trying very hard. You just Google Matt Bevins Twitter, you can read the whole thing. But here's the thing, if you find,
I know a little bit about something.
if you find any evidence that I ever said that, I will give you $1,000 in cash with all these people as my witness. You will never find it because I never said it. So if you're good at internet, which sounds like you are, I give you a challenge.
It's a lot to work with you.
Yeah, it's a lot to me. And that's why I'm willing to offer it to you in exchange for you proving to me that that was ever said.
It's a lot to you. You talk about prevailing wage. We got men go from $30 an hour down to $15 when you pass that.
Yeah, number one, the legislature passed it, and I signed it for the reasons we just said. Because guess whose money that is? Whose money is it? It's the taxpayers' money. I'm going to be a good steward of it.
Taxpayer, I say pay men what they deserve, $30 an hour pay.
And your legislature said differently. So you should run for the legislature, and I mean it sincerely.
We have a good legislature.
Good. But my point is this, it's the legislators who make these decisions.
You right here, you got that ink pen, you sign it.
But here's understanding, back to your point, man. On a lot of these things, what you read is what somebody said, and then it gets repeated as gospel. Understand this. Again, you can disagree, but I challenge you to find, everything that I do is recorded. Everything. By multiple people. Find any audio or video of this. So that said, other questions on anything? Yes, ma'am.
You're here for economic development. We would love to hear what you have in store for Eastern Kentucky for economic development. We really love to hear that.
A couple things on the economic development front. We have had, as was noted, more money invested in private capital in this state than we've had in the history of this state. Up to nearly $20 billion now that has been invested in the last 3.5 years. This comes by, despite the fact that we have financial challenges and people are aware of it, which gives them pause, it's going out and making the case to people that we're a worthy investment anyway. And so one of my primary jobs is, Abraham Lincoln, a famous son of ours, said, good things may come to those who wait, but only the things left behind by those who hustle. And that's true. And so the key is, we need to just out-hustle other states for opportunities. You look at things that are happening, not all in this immediate community, but things that are happening up and down the eastern part of the state, western, and in between. This $20 billion is private capital being invested here. It's $20 billion that results in seeds in the ground that then germinate. My job is to try to create more of these opportunities. Today is Saturday. You watch Monday for an announcement that's going to affect this region, a little bit north of here, but reaffirming some things that have been done. Where people have concerns, announcements are made. Is this really going to come? Is this really happening? These things take time. None of this is a slam dunk. But all of this is a function of going out there and convincing people that at many levels, the workforce, the quality of life, the cost of living, the low cost of energy, these things are things that are tremendously in demand in America. And we have an abundance of it in this community and in communities around here. An abundance of it. And so my job is to go out there and out-hustle these other states and make the case. A good example of it, and you've heard it said, without vision the people will perish. True enough. It's biblical, it's scriptural, but it's frankly very true in other respects. It's true for a family, for a business, for a county, for a state, for a country. You need vision. What is the vision? I'll explain to you briefly what my vision is and how I think it ties into economic development. How it is that we will have the kids from other states coming here for jobs. If you wanted to engineer and manufacture something, anything, from beginning to end, you want to engineer and manufacture something from start to finish, you had to do it in a single country, in Europe. Where would you likely start? Anyone? Germany. Exactly. I mean, this is what most people will think of first. Now, does it mean you could only do it in Germany? Of course not. You could do it in any number of places. But people think of Germany as far as engineered and manufactured products. If I were to ask you the same question, if you wanted to engineer and manufacture something to the highest degree of excellence, you had to do it in a single state in the United States, where would you start? It's not as easy. Some might say Kentucky, but you could quite literally get an easily 5, 10, 15, 20 other different answers, all is justifiable. This tells us two things. Number one, nobody owns it as instinctively as Germany owns it in people's minds. And if nobody owns it, it's available for ownership. So my vision is that we will be the center of engineering and manufacturing excellence in the United States of America. That we will own it. In order to do that, what's the base component of all things engineered and manufactured is fundamental materials. It's not accidental that we have had nearly $5 billion worth of investments of that $20 billion into the metallurgical industry. I am intentionally going out and trying to find the smelters. I'm trying to find the foundries. I'm trying to find the rolling mills. I'm trying to find the steel production facilities. We just announced 2 weeks ago, in a town of 2,000 people, 3 times the size of this one, a $1.4 billion investment. Where in that town, there will be 2,000 construction workers over the course of the next 2.5 years, building a facility on 900 acres. That's extraordinary what that's going to do to that community. But it's not just that community. It's the ripple effect that comes from it. They'll be making 1.2 million tons of steel, starting with plate as thick as 14 inches, that they'll be able to roll down to 1/8 of an inch if people want. But they have the capacity to do things that can't be done anywhere else in America. That capacity is going to attract people who would take that metal and do things with it. People that will bend it, fabricate it, weld it. People that are going to do things that then are going to be turned into value-added products that we have the ability to buy. Because of the cost of logistics. Those people are going to want to be closer than not. This rolling mill up in northern Kentucky, just up the road in Ashland. Not far from, what are we, 50 miles maybe? I mean, how far are we? Maybe 50 miles or so from there? You think that won't have a ripple effect on this community? There'll be people here working up there. There'll be extraordinary opportunities. But then what's going to happen when you have a facility up there producing hundreds of thousands of high-grade, industrial-level quality aluminum? They've already sold multiples of their ability to produce before they're even up and running. When that's there, the companies that make things out of it are going to move into communities like this one and others. That's what economic development is about, because it's this ecosystem. When you look at the Toyota plant when it went to Georgetown, it was stuck in a cornfield in the middle of nowhere. There's now 8,000 people, 8,500 that go to work there every day. There's 200 Japanese-owned companies that employ 45,000 people in Kentucky every day. People, including some from communities like this, who drive a long way. That's all possible when you get the base level producers. If we produce the metals, we produce the people who make things out of the metals, then we will have jobs, the likes of which will be plentiful. That's how we're going to have people paying taxes, because people will be making living wages, doing any number of different things. And there'll be union jobs and non-union jobs alike. It's interesting. People think it's an attack somehow when you get rid of the prevailing wage. Are you kidding me? It creates more opportunity. And some of those, take a look at the state like Indiana. Indiana got rid of right to work, for example, which is a hotly contested thing. We did it 2 years ago. We've had 60% increase in opportunities, and look at the ones that are coming in, like Brady, like Nucor, and others. They would not have come here without it. But interestingly, you look at Indiana, they went 2012, so 7 years now. There's 50,000 more union members working in Indiana than there were 7 years ago. Why? Because there's more jobs. There's more jobs for everybody. Somebody, that gentleman, I think he left, asked my thoughts on people joining unions. Heck, some of the greatest skills we have applied across the trades are done by union members. Because the apprenticeship program, the training programs are second to none in many instances. We need these kind of skills. But it's not the role of government to pick winners or losers or dictate to people. It's to create an environment in which these jobs are created. Some will be done by union folks, some by non-union folks. It'll be a competitive environment. And that will be better for all of us. So this is my passion. This is where I come from. Again, I'm a business guy. I'm a former military guy, but I got out of the military 25 plus years ago. And since then, I've been in the business world, trying to bring that approach and mindset to fixing things like pensions, like adoption and foster care, but frankly, creating opportunity for people. Because that's what's going to save this community and every other one. Yes, sir?
Yeah, given that vision you just gave, how do you see a community like this that, that needs to prepare for that future when it's struggling today just to even survive and barely having water capacity for itself? How's it going to have water capacity for a factory?
Well, here's the thing: it's not the access to water.
Yeah.
We've got plenty of water. It's how we get clean water, how we process it, so that we get the particulates and things out. That's part of it. Number two, how we make sure the integrity of the lines is such that we're not pumping 50% of it or more into the ground.
It's not really a water question, but it's how do we, we're struggling today, how do we prepare for that future?
But I mention this because it is partially a water issue. You make sure you get your water lines right. You make sure you get your roads right. Because here's the wonderful thing. The greatest shortage there is in America, the greatest shortage, ask any governor, it's a quality workforce. It's people that will be drug-free, show up on time, and give an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. There's plenty of them all over this state. There's plenty of them in this community. Plenty who would struggle with one or more of those things, but plenty who wouldn't. And they want a job. They're willing to do that job. And here's the thing. There are companies that need them so badly that you get that aluminum rolling mill up the road, then a company that's going to make stuff out of that product will say, hey, listen, I only need 25 people. Heck, where can I go where I can get 25 people, not fight for the turnover, where I won't have to worry about loyalty, where people will be grateful for the job, and heck, their kids will probably take their place. They're going to come to communities like this. Because the people who live here on purpose. It's not easy to be here. It's not. So if you're here on purpose. There's options. You can move elsewhere. But why are people here on purpose? Because they love it. Because this is home. This is where family and tradition is from. And so if you bring jobs here, we don't need the next president who comes to town to come with another government program. We need a president to come and create an environment in this community that opens up the potential for job creation. We'll do the jobs. We've got the people. You are the people. Seriously. This is how this will get done. So I think the key is focus on infrastructure. And while it seems obvious, let's work on these issues piece by piece. Start again. One of the things that has sometimes happened, I'll come to your question. One of the things that has, in the very back, one of the things that we have sometimes done is we've allowed wheels to get greased based on who's the magistrate here or who's the connected person there. So we'll replace a piece of water line with 8 pieces of bad water line between it and the next good water line because it's in front of someone's house. Well, what kind of logic is that? I would encourage you all, and I'm probably preaching to the choir, let's get the filtration center, let's get the hub right, and then work our way out. Will everybody get what they want when they want immediately? No. But let's make sure the integrity of what we have is solid, and let's make this thing work. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, but those are the kind of things. If this community does that, does smart and simple things, a step at a time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to give everybody what they want right when they want it. But those basic, simple disciplines is how it's going to get done. And then people will come and say, listen, I could hire 50 people in this town tomorrow that would come to work and bust their tail. And heck, it would be easier than that probably. But to say somebody and I only need 20, well, heck, and they'll come in from other communities so I could have 400 people applying for my 20 jobs. They will come. But they do want to make sure there's certain fundamental things. So I'd look at water, then I'd look at things like other capabilities, electric and gas and whatever other capabilities people ultimately need. But the jobs are out there waiting to be had. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you on two things. You restored my aunt about the vote, and I really appreciate it.
I wouldn't have done it if she didn't deserve it.
I appreciate it. I also want to thank you on the concealed carry goes in July, because I think it's a constitutional issue. I think you've done a fine job on that. But I also want to criticize you on this, and maybe I'll get you.
I suspected that might be crazy.
I leave home on Monday morning. I leave about 4 o'clock. I drive 3 hours to work. I stay in a hotel all week. And I come home on Friday. It burns me up when I see people in a Brooks Brothers suit standing in a bucket of a backhoe, shutting down the town of Ashland, drinking champagne with a hard hat on, promising, and them folks still don't have a job up there.
Not yet.
You say Brady Industries, no. They ain't coming, you know they're not coming.
Stay tuned, my friend.
I have stayed tuned for a couple of years now. Also,
stay tuned. If you truly believe these things spring out of the ground, think twice.
What?
I said, if you think these things just magically spring out, they take years. They were projected to take years.
Of course they're going to take years, because guess what? This year is election year. Anyway, Interblue and Pikeville, same thing. Now, can you explain to me what's going on there?
At this point, nothing's going on there.
I know nothing.
Because they don't have the capital. Because here's the thing, ask anybody, ask Jim Booth, ask anybody who is actually in business. You need to, unless you have billions of your own dollars, which most people don't, you need capital from someplace.
Sir,
you can have all the ideas in the world, but if you can't fund them.
You cut. You say, with all the money we say, now we have the capital. Right? We got the money, you cut.
I don't think you understand how business works.
Right to work, saving money. You ain't saving it.
Okay, I don't even know what to do with that because that didn't make any sense, but go ahead.
Governor, could you tell us what you've been doing in addiction and how to treat the drug epidemic?
Boy, the question is about addiction and treating the drug epidemic. There are several things that we have been doing. First of all is we now have a 3-day limitation on initial prescriptions of opioids. That's not going to fix everything, you know this. You're dealing with the backside of this. But the reality is this, it's not a function of just stopping it. I've heard somebody say, the drug problem begins in your medicine cabinet. At the risk of taking this in a whole another direction, I'll bring it back to a specific, it doesn't start in your medicine cabinet. It starts in the souls of men.
Right.
The drug addiction problem comes from a loss of confidence in a human being, in hope, in opportunity. There's 1,000 reasons why that might be. It might be psychological, it might be physical, it might be financial, but it is a root problem that leads to addiction. I don't know anybody that sets out to become addicted to anything. Never met a person who is addicted, and I've had many. There's not a person in this room, myself included, who isn't 1 degree of separation away from this in your own family and immediate circle. Nobody sets out and says, hey, I'm going to go out and become an addict. So you have to look at what are the root causes, what are we doing in our families, and what are we doing in our communities, and our churches, and our businesses to take ownership of this problem. And so what I've tried to do is first say, let's do what we can to make things like Narcan available to save a person's life and give them a chance. Let's do what we can to limit the initial prescription of an opioid to 3 days or less. Those are simple things. They're not going to fix it because those are not the cause, but those are one of the things that help to facilitate the addiction. We've fought for things like opening up the number of beds that you couldn't have Medicaid dollars applied to somebody going through addiction recovery if they were in a facility that happened to have more than 16 beds. Craziness. Things like that. It's personally something that I've worked with the federal government on, and that's finally changing. These things are starting to happen. These are all little things, but in combination, they're going to add up to results. We're seeing this, actually. We're seeing the number of you asked about opioids, but we've seen the number of opioid deaths decline. Actually, they've leveled off and actually declined slightly in Kentucky. Not nationally, but in Kentucky. But sadly, we've started to see a proliferation of methamphetamines again that is not unlike what we saw some years ago. So it's like squeezing a balloon a little bit. This isn't lost on me. And again, I've lost immediate family members to this who are gone, whose lives were destroyed, who died from this. So this is something, when it grips somebody, it's hard to ungrip. What we know is people who become addicted to opioids become those who do. We're all different. You and I and you, we could all take the same prescription, and it will affect us differently. And I might be somebody who's more prone to that addiction. And what we know, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has studied this. People who become addicted to opioids become addicted after 5 continuous days of use. After just 5 days, it's like a hockey stick. It literally, your chances of addiction, or more like a cliff really, but your chances of addiction go down or up so dramatically after 5 days of continuous use if you are wired physiologically to become addicted. The pharmacodynamic effect, which is the physical effect that it has on the brain, because it's an opioid, which is a mind-altering drug. These things, because it inhibits receptors for pain, these things affect people differently. People who become addicted 5 days or beyond. Why in the heck are we giving people 10 and 20-day subscriptions? Because some will be able to handle it and some won't, and you self-medicate. So if you're in extra pain, you take a double dose, come on. Simple things like this. These things aren't going to fix it. We've put millions and millions of dollars into heroin treatment programs. We've done things in this state that have been very controversial. Some are for it, some are against it. And that's things like needle exchanges. Some people say, what the heck is my money being spent to give somebody a clean syringe? Well, I'll tell you what, not justifying it one way or the other, but study after study have shown that it's not just the syringe associated with drugs, it's the Hep A, B, and C, and other things that come from proliferation of diseases that are driven by dirty needles. All these things, there's no clean or simple or easy answer. But part of it is we've got to destigmatize a lot of this. The reality is, again, if we were honest, I don't think a person in this room wouldn't raise their hand if I said, do you have an immediate family member or someone very close to your family who has been gripped by this? Everybody does. So let's stop pretending that everybody doesn't. Let's stop trying to hide it. It's a sad, harsh reality. And if we destigmatize it, and then also, back to this gentleman left, where he talked about his aunt, I think it was, who had her rights restored. How many people, 90% of the women in our prison system in this state are there for drug-related activity. 90%! 75% of the men or more in every jail are there for the same reasons. This is an addiction. It is a disease, and it isn't cured by being in jail. It's not. I'm not saying that it's a breaking of the law. I'm not saying people shouldn't be held to account, because they should. If you break the law, you should be held to account. But what we do when you break the law should be rethought. If just locking a person up for a period of time, not dealing with the addiction, and then throwing them right back into a society where now they have a conviction and they can't get a job, oh, and they still have never dealt with the addiction, have we really helped anybody? Why don't we start thinking about diverting people at the moment they've broken the law into either jail or a treatment facility where you can be dealing with the addiction? We spend $25,000 a year on average to put a person in jail. That includes our county and our state jails. $25,000 a year. For $25,000 a year, you could put a person in a pretty decent and comprehensive recovery program. And not for 30 days when it's a 90-day program, which is the kind of silliness. We have these rules where at the federally level, they're often driven that will allow money that would pay for 30 days for a person to be in a recovery center. Well, that's the silliest thing. If you know it's a 90-day program, you're just wasting money. And you know you're wasting money. So why do it? So you can feel good and say, well, we tried to help them. Look, it didn't work. Heck, for a fraction of what it costs to keep a person incarcerated, we could help people get their lives back on the first time, not the 5th time. And if some of y'all in law enforcement, you know, you go to the same houses over and over. You brought some of the same people back to life more than once. It's crazy. Why didn't we intercede? Will we be able to save everybody? Will all these things I've mentioned fix all of it? Of course not. Of course not. But the reality is this. These things will make a difference. We have a responsibility to look out for one another. This is what a community does. I mean, most of y'all are people of faith. Not everybody, but most are. What is the body of Christ about? To be the hands and feet of Christ involves getting dirty. Right. Involves rolling your sleeves up. It's about treating your neighbor like yourself. It is. I mean, these are the kind of things that are common sense once upon a time. But we've forgotten it, and we now think the government is going to fix all this. The government is not going to fix this. This is a problem in the human soul, and it is affected by and it is helped by people like us. It just is. We have this responsibility. There are things the state can do, things the state is doing. We are making great strides on this. We still have a long way to go. But I appreciate people like you who I know have a passion for this and are involved in this, and a lot of people are. Not just in their questions, but in the things they're doing with their lives day to day. And we're making an inroads. We will. At the end of the day, people deserve the dignity associated with the chance to pursue the American dream. It's going to be different for different people. I'm being told we've got time for a couple more questions. Yes, ma'am. And then Jim.
On the foster care system, you said it was broken. What some of the things you're going to do to correct it?
Boy, the questions about the foster care system, which is broken, what are some of the things we're doing? My wife and I, more than 10 years ago, tried to adopt a little girl out of the foster care system in Kentucky. We had 5 children at the time. We went through more than a year of home studies and fingerprints and inspections and financial reports and home inspections and fingerprints over and over and over again for more than a year. At the end of which we were told, you know what, you already have 5 kids. It's better for this child to stay in the system than to be the 6th child in a family because she won't get enough attention. That little girl is now an adult somewhere, probably is being trafficked, probably in an abusive situation. Her life has not statistically likely turned out well. She never was adopted, to my knowledge. Nobody was trying to adopt an 11-year-old girl. We were willing to do it. She would have been the 6th child. I think we would have managed. I have 9 children now. We ended up subsequently adopting 4 children. My son Joan is in here somewhere, one of my little guys. And I don't know where he is, but he's here. Number 8. I really have never lost one for long. He's in the back. You ever think about this? I mean, here's the reality. You know, what we need to do to fix this is to address the fact that it's not working well. It's too complicated, it's too time-consuming, it's just too bureaucratic and redundant. So you watch what's happening in 2019. It's already starting. You talk to the caseworkers. You ask your local DCBS caseworker what a difference it has meant, A, to get a pay raise, B, to get recognized, C, to have a cell phone and an iPad so that even if they don't have connectivity in that moment, they can load information in that they used to have to write down on paper, go back to the office and fill out by hand after they were done working all day. We're doing simple, basic things to allow our overworked social workers to actually have some semblance of a life. We stopped early on the forced overtime that was requiring people to just burn out. Again, none of these is fixing everything, but it's making an inroad. And this year, we are drawing a whole lot of attention. In the months ahead, we're going to have a whole lot of people, some that are known to people, some that aren't. But we have organizations like Focus on the Family and Wendy's Wonderful Kids and the Annie Casey Foundation, America's Kids Belong, and a whole lot of others, Jockey Being Family, people who are pouring into this state all together, the only state they're all working together, because they know we have a passion for this, they know we believe in it, they appreciate that my wife and I have actually done this and believe it and are doing it. We have people like Ashton Kutcher and people like Celine Dion and Franco Corso and people that will be in this state helping us at no charge to us in the months ahead on this issue. And they're doing it because they believe it needs to be done and they believe that we're serious about doing it. Will that fix everything for every kid? No, it won't. But I'll end this with this, and then Jim, I'll take yours and we'll probably have to wrap. But I will say this. Kids who age out of the foster care system, we have 10,000 foster care kids. So I'm going to take a quick aside for a minute. We have 10,000 kids roughly in the foster care system in the state. A lot from communities like this. About 2,500 of them are adoption eligible and want to be adopted. I'm begging you all, be those people. If you can't personally adopt a child, you can help someone who does. You can help make a meal, you can help provide a date night, you can help provide some daycare, you can help provide whatever, some clothes that your kids have grown out of. This is not, we're 4.5 million people, come on. We have 6,500 houses of worship in this state. 6,500 houses of worship, and we got 2,500 kids that nobody will adopt. What's wrong with us? What are we doing on Sundays and Wednesdays and whatever other days? What is it we're talking about when we talk about taking care of people, treating them the way we want to be treated? If we can't find in 65, we can't find one home for a kid out of every 2.5 churches in this state, what are we doing? Seriously. The kids who age out, it's called aging out at the age of 18. Their lives are miserable. They're 18, they're an adult now, and the state washes its hands of them. It's not just this state, it's every state. Some they may get an extra couple of years as an option, but a kid who's been bounced around a system that's failed them their whole life doesn't want to opt to stay in. They think it can't be worse, except it is, because people prey on them. People exploit them and traffic them. 34% of kids who age out at the age of 18, 34% nationally, end up being involved in the criminal justice system by the time they're 19, within their first year. You couple that with the fact more than 50% of them will never graduate from high school, will never get a GED. If you are a young woman who ages out, it is almost a statistical certainty that you will be trafficked, you will be abused, you will be in an abusive situation, you will have children out of wedlock, and you and those children will live in poverty the rest of your lives. Because we're failing these kids. This is so remarkably unacceptable to me. We can do this, we are doing it a piece at a time. And I will say this, 9 is a lot of kids, not everybody's going to have them. But even though we were told that we couldn't possibly keep up with the 6th child, actually the 6th one, the first of the 4 we adopted is here, and although I lost him for a moment, I understand he is in the room, and that's all good. My point is this, everybody can do something to address this, and that's all I ask. So, Jim, you had a question. So to answer your question, a lot's being done, a lot yet to do. We're going to fix this, and I want Kentucky to be the gold standard. We'll never do it perfectly, but I want us to be a state that people go to.
Can you tell us a little bit about your running mate for Lieutenant Governor?
That's a great question. Yes, my running mate for Lieutenant Governor is a gentleman named Ralph Alvarado. And Ralph is a guy, our current Lieutenant Governor is Janine Hampton, who's outstanding, a dear friend of mine for many years, somebody who I have tremendous respect for, somebody who inspires young people in particular in a powerful way. And she's been a great Lieutenant Governor. One of the biggest challenges I had when I made the decision to run again is, do I run with her or do I run with someone else? What does the state need in the next 4 years relative to what we have? And when I look at her skill set and her passion, the things she enjoys doing and wants to do, I have to consider that, because out of respect for